Díos Murray Galéir Gorgia agus tá fáilte Spitheróid Galéir Margin Quigan Specialta Show. Hello everybody and welcome this morning to the launch of Frontline Voices, a powerful new collaboration between the Limerick Writers Centre and the Midwest Regional Drugs and Alcohol Forum. My own name is Tomás Quillon. I'm the poetry editor at Revival Press, which is the poetry wing of the Limerick Writers Centre. It is a privilege to be here this morning in Limerick City Hall to introduce the people who brought this book from an idea to the completed project that we now hold in our hands. Frontline Voices is an anthology of uncut prose and poetic reflections from the front lines of social care. This is a platform for those whose lives and work unfold in the realms of care, justice and human need. We will first hear from Dominic Taylor, who is the Director and Managing Editor of the Limerick Writers Centre. Welcome, Dominic.
Very well, Tommy. Okay, I'd just like to reiterate again, on behalf of everyone at the Limerick Writers Centre, I want to add my own warm welcome to you all as we come together this morning to launch this remarkable and important book. Before I talk a little bit about the book itself, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the Limerick Writers Centre and what we believe in and what drives our work. At the heart of everything we do is a simple but powerful belief. Every single person in our society has a creative voice and deserves to be heard. It doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, or your circumstances you find yourself in, your voice matters. Our mission is to provide people with opportunities to express that voice and to celebrate the creative work that comes from it. Whether someone writes poetry, works on a novel, shares their life story through memoir, or expresses themselves through song, we believe that their creative output has real value and importance. Our great Irish poet Seamus Heaney talked about how literature and creative expression functions as bearers of value, and that's exactly what we see in the work people share with us. One of the most meaningful ways we put these principles into action is through our partnership with the Midwest Regional Drugs and Alcohol Forum. Back in 2017, we worked together on a drug and alcohol awareness campaign that resulted in a book called Voices from the Cave, an anthology of poems about addiction and recovery. This project was tremendously successful and really showed us the power of creative expression in addressing difficult subjects. What struck us most about how it attracted contributors from right across society, people from all different walks of life, all economic backgrounds, all came together to share their experience and perspectives through poetry and writing. Building on that success, we embarked on another collaborative project with the Forum. This time, a series of creative writing workshops for men and women incarcerated in Limerick prison. This initiative was completely in line with our core commitment to bring creative writing opportunities to people and communities who are often pushed to the margins of society. These workshops gave inmates a chance to express themselves, to find their voices, and to connect with something meaningful during a difficult time in their lives. The powerful writing that came out of these sessions was compiled into a pamphlet we called Free Voices. Beyond these projects, we've also organised and led a series of workshops focused on communication skills, specifically designed for frontline workers in the social services, people who deal with challenging situations and vulnerable individuals every single day. We firmly believe that it's actually profoundly important to encourage artistic expression and provide creative support to all groups in society. This is especially true for those who are marginalised, people who, often through no fault of their own, have been denied access to quality arts education and cultural opportunities that many of us take for granted. Our partnership with the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum has opened doors for us to reach these communities. Through literary activities and creative writing programs, we've been able to play a small part in raising awareness about important social issues, building a vibrant, inclusive literary community here in Limerick, and hopefully inspiring in others a genuine love and passion for literature and creative expression. This ongoing work, reaching out, including everyone, celebrating diverse voices, is what the Limerick Writers Centre is dedicated to nurturing and developing. There's something almost magical, something uniquely transformative that happens when people gather together to share writing and stories and the power of imagination with one another. When you bring together a collection of people from different cultures, holding different beliefs, spanning at different ages and abilities, living different lifestyles, identifying as different genders, speaking different languages, when all these wonderful, diverse people come together around literature and creative expression, something special happens. Connections are made, understanding grows, barriers break down. So with all this in mind, when Michael Lacey, the chairperson of the forum, approached us with a suggestion for a new project, we were immediately interested. Michael asked us to develop an anthology that would showcase writing by the people working at the coalface of social services, particularly those who work directly with the drugs problem in our society and who witness firsthand the devastating impact it has on individuals, on families, and on entire communities. The idea was to create a collection that would present the authentic, real-life experience of both professionals and volunteers working in social inclusion services. We wanted to give these frontline workers a platform to tell their stories in their own words. The result of that initiative is Frontline Voices, the book we're launching here today. It has been expertly edited by Kieran Bevel, who is both an accomplished writer and teacher. I genuinely believe this book makes an invaluable contribution to public understanding of the various people and services that interact with vulnerable members of our community on a daily basis. What emerges from these pages is not the picture of faceless, uncaring bureaucracy that people sometimes imagine when they think of the system. Instead, what we see is something far more human. We see compassion, we see people who truly care, and we see stories that lead to greater understanding and empathy between frontline workers and the wider community they serve. One thing that genuinely surprised us, and I think will surprise many readers, was the number and quality of contributions we received from both serving and retired members of An Garda Síochána. These are men and women who are often criticised for the work they do, who face difficult situations every single day. But their stories and poems in this collection reveal something that doesn't always make the headlines. Their first response, even when dealing with hardened drug users and extremely vulnerable people, is one of genuine care and concern for these individuals' well-being. These are deeply human responses from the people who choose careers to service in the community. The Limerick Writers Centre is incredibly proud to have been part of this initiative. We strongly encourage members of the general public and those working in the caring professions to read these heartfelt, honest writings. They offer unique and valuable insights into the challenges these workers face every day, and more importantly, they illuminate the profound human connections that occur in this vital, often difficult work. These stories needed to be told, and we're honoured to help tell them. Thank you.
Good morning, Dominic. Up next we will hear from Kieran Bevel, who took on the key role of editor for this project. Kieran is the author of more than 25 books, including 6 poetry collections with us at Revival Press, but his work spans multiple genres. His column in the Limerick Leader is always a fascinating read, and this morning he might echo some of the insight from this week's essay. Welcome, Dr. Kieran Bevel.
Lovely to see such a great turnout. Fantastic. So good morning again to everyone, and it's an honour to welcome you here today for the launch of Frontline Voices, an anthology of uncut prose and poetic reflections from the front lines of social care. Before turning to the book, I want to acknowledge those who made it possible. First and foremost, the contributors. Without your courage, your honesty and willingness to share lived experience, there would be no anthology, no gathering this morning. To the publisher, thank you for recognizing the importance of voices that are too often unheard. And of course to CAST, the Community Access Support Team, to the Midwest Regional Drugs and Alcohol Forum, to An Garda Síochána as well. It is, after all, a collaborative project. So, to everyone here today, thank you for showing up, for your presence, your listening, and your solidarity. This anthology is not simply a collection of poems and prose. It's not polished, it's not tidy or reassuring. Instead, Frontline Voices is a book of presence. It asks us to sit with another person's truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable or unresolved. The voices here speak from hospital wards and psychiatric spaces, from work with homelessness and addiction, from Irish streets. These are not abstract accounts, they are lived, embodied, and close. One of the defining strengths of this collection is its refusal of easy redemption stories. Real lives rarely move cleanly from despair to triumph. Here, recovery is fragile and ongoing. Survival carries scars. Love, grief, hope, and mistrust exist side by side. This kind of honesty matters. It reminds us that people are more than statistics or cases. They are neighbours, strangers, and sometimes mirrors of ourselves. Across the anthology, we encounter stories of isolation giving way to community. We read of care work shaped by compassion and fatigue, of decades spent witnessing how early disadvantage echoes into adult life, and of frontline health encounters that linger long after the moment has passed. Poetry and prose speak to the daily labour of welcome, walking alongside people navigating homelessness, addiction, mental distress and exclusion. They remind us that healing is not linear, and that inclusion is something practiced, not merely declared. We encounter writing that challenges silence around masculinity, difference and self-censorship, tracing difficult journeys towards self-acceptance. We hear poetry shaped by the homelessness sector, work that names neglect, boarded up spaces, and childhood silences that refuse to disappear. Each voice speaks with urgency. Each insists that silence is not an option. As Dominic already mentioned, a distinctive feature of Frontline Voices is the inclusion of work connected to An Garda Síochána. These pieces show policing not only as law enforcement, but as human work, complex, uncertain, and often emotionally charged. We glimpse midnight patrols, roadside encounters, moments of humour and moments of loss. Some pieces speak from within the uniform, others from the other side of the encounter. Together they sit within the wider landscape of care, justice, and community that this book holds. If there's one thread running through Frontline Voices, it is witness. To bear witness is to say, I saw, I heard, I did not look away. In a world that often prefers silence around suffering, witness resists forgetting. When grief is named, dignity is reclaimed. When displacement is spoken aloud, reduction to statistics is refused. And when we read these stories, we become witnesses too. That is both the invitation and the responsibility this book offers. While this anthology does not shy away from pain, it is not without hope. There is laughter here, often where we least expect it. There is solidarity in sheds, hospital corridors, housing estates. There is the stubborn creation of meaning through language, care and connection. These moments remind us that even within broken systems, people find ways to endure. Why does a book like this matter now? Because too many voices are still unheard. Because behind every debate about housing, health, addiction or justice are real lives shaped by those conversations. Because empathy cannot be outsourced, it must be built story by story. At a time when public discourse is quick to polarize, Frontline Voices insists on nuance and complexity. That is both rare and necessary. So today, I want to extend an invitation. Read these stories, sit with them, let them unsettle and challenge you. Notice the echoes between lives, how loneliness, care, grief and hope travel across different settings. Don't look away. Carry these voices with you into your conversations, communities and decisions. Because Frontline Voices is not only a book, it is a collective act of testimony, an archive of presence, and an invitation to empathy, solidarity and change. I want to close with a phrase that echoes throughout the anthology. I am here, this happened, it matters. Those words are the heartbeat of this book. They remind us that storytelling is survival, that witness is a form of care, and that in truly listening we affirm one another's humanity. To the contributors, thank you for your courage. To the publisher, thank you for making space for this work. And to all of you here today, thank you for listening and for carrying these voices forward. May this book travel far beyond today, and may we leave holding fast to the truth at its center. I'm here, this happened, it matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. And next, could we please welcome, on behalf of the Midwest Drugs and Alcohol Forum, Chairperson Michael Lacey.
Hello everybody, and very hard to follow three excellent speakers there. And this is my last task as outgoing chair of the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum, as I retired recently. So if I make any mistakes or say anything incorrectly, you can blame the new acting chair, young Jim Finn. We're called the Midwest Regional Drug and Alcohol Forum. Originally task force, but we found task force was too authoritative. Forum is more participative and it's engaging. And the forum is based on the principles of participative democracy, i.e. engaging with people, not inviting people from the community into meetings and saying, this is the decisions that's been made. We make decisions collectively, based on critical reflection and emphatic solidarity. We're funded by the Department of Health, and we're greatly thankful to them, but Department of Health is not necessarily based on the principles of participative democracy. It's more built on central democracy, and then decisions are made at the top, and unfortunately they don't have the sense of engagement that the task force has, and that was evident. I sat on the steering committee of reducing harm, sport and recovery, and there was wonderful people there that was developing the new strategy, and there was a remarkable gentleman there, and he was Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll, and during the COVID, the Department of Health were talking what we're doing, what they weren't doing, and I asked them, did they contact the Gardaí? Yes, of course we did. And did we contact the prison service? Of course we did. And I said, somewhere then, a few minutes later, Assistant Commissioner Sean O'Driscoll said, no one contacted us. No one contacted us. They hadn't been contacted. And they outlined what the Garda were doing on the ground. They were looking at mental health, suicide, overdoses. There was very, very little of any criminal work, if that's the term. So we developed a great relationship with him. So the wonderful piece by Dr. Andrew Lacey, no relation, in the book about Cass is absolutely wonderful. It's worth reading because it puts the whole lot together. But trying to research this book was sort of difficult. It was like pulling teeth because, for example, nurses would have, like guards, are very task-oriented. They have wonderful experience. They work very hard, and they have lots of stories to tell, but they're not encouraged to reflect on that knowledge because of the patriarchal, matriarchal. Same as the Gardaí are not encouraged to reflect on what they're saying. Like Sandra, I was trying to do my PhD 13 years ago. I still haven't finished the book. I might in a few days. But I did placement with the Guards going around for a couple of weeks, and I was in the squad car. On one particular evening, there was a lot of issues happening, and I saw the Guards. They were rally car drivers, great experience. I said I'll take tomorrow, social worker dies in the back of the squad car going around the roundabout, which I felt. Social workers intervening in crisis, violence, ambulance drivers. It was a wonderful experience, and I went back to the station that night, and after all the work we were doing, I was quite stressed out. No, I had been working on the cold face as a social worker, and I was used to stressful situations, but this was extremely stressful all in one evening. I went back to the police station, everyone just went home, and there was a very strong smell of fish in the station. Some guy was boiling fish. I wondered about that. Suddenly, on the news came in, it was January the 25th, 2013, a 41-year-old officer was murdered on a cash escort duty in Dundalk, you know. And just like that, it was so poignant, it was so sad. And it didn't appear to be any debriefing, you know. And then, so this sort of, I had worked as a social worker with the Department of Justice, Department of Defence and Department of Health. Again, I remember in Lebanon, and I was in a place called Rashid, and I was with the sergeant there, and I was reading his daily report, and the amount of summary executions, atrocities. I nearly, and thankfully didn't, nearly witnessed a cold-blooded murder of people. Thankfully I didn't. And I said to the sergeant, I never realised that you were exposed to all this. He said, oh yeah, don't tell him. I said, listen, you big buck city, you don't go home and start telling my wife about this, or she'll kill me. But she wouldn't let him go. That's how bad it was. Again, I spoke to a wonderful person in Nuala Lord, and she was the head of social work down in Cork, a wonderful person, and she was one of the first social workers in the 50s and 60s working with the ISPCC, the Irish Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children. It was mainly based in, people in Dublin were very reluctant to go there because it was sort of Protestant oriented, you know. Social work comes from a Protestant Quaker background, and the powers that be didn't really favour that. There was no childcare guidelines, there was no sexual abuse, and so on. There was no suicides, it wasn't recorded. And I said, how did you handle all the abuse? She said, this is one story, we couldn't really put it in the book, but she said, if there was sort of physical violence in the home from an abusive husband or male in the house, they didn't know what to do, but they would contact Lewis Brannigan. He was a well-known guard in Dublin, and he would call out to the house of the perpetrator and hide in the wardrobe when the perpetrator came in on Thursday when men got paid, and just finished. The offences very rarely happened after his intervention. That's how the partnership that they had in those days, I'm talking about the 50s and the 60s. But then again, it brings me to a more serious a guard in 215 intervening in a domestic issue. He was escorting a wife away from her abusive husband, carrying her bags, and he was shot dead. So the people who died, and bringing this stories from the front line, it's the stories that haven't been written, it's the experience of reflecting on it that these individuals came to mind. Also, the great Catherine Lucas died in September the 12th, 2016 during an Irish Coast Guard search operation off the coast of Clare. A very sad occasion. So there's also the crew, the 4 crew members in the rescue 116, the Irish Coast Guard helicopter. Captain Dara Fitzpatrick, the female commander, Captain Mark Duffy, Paul Ormsby, and Kieran Smith. And so these are the people that if we could have in our thoughts, and the people working on the cold face. Finally, I'd like to say, I meant to mention, on behalf of the task force, the people, the support got from Philomena project worker with the task force, Helen Ryan, and the coordinator of the task force, Rory Kane, who's the regional manager, who's a very knowledgeable, has a great understanding of the psychosocial aspects of addiction, very approachable. And I had in my office when I worked for the HSC, the mortal human dressed in a slice of authority can do things to make 8 angels scream. And what you will find within the HSC, in the Limerick or in the task force, is that lack of, it's based on emphatic solidarity and not engaging in an authoritative approach. So let me see. So I'd like to thank all of those heroes working on the front line: nurses, doctors, emergency units, ambulance drivers, Limerick Suicide Watch, Gardaí, social workers, counsellors, outreach workers. A sizable amount of people who work out, not greatly paid, work silently in the shadows, working with the broken, the mentally ill, the homeless, and so on. Not looking for acolytes or looking for rewards. So, a sizable number of people in the community. It's just, unfortunately, that the powers that be are not supplying enough resources. We have issues with trust-led childcare agencies. We have an outrageous step made by the Inspector of Prisons. He has never seen worse conditions anywhere. That's what he said, in the conditions of prisons. UL hospital, overcrowded in the hospitals, and so on, and the resources are not there. So I hope that the powers that be listen and read this book, and I don't think there's anything else to say. So that's all I have to say.
To represent on Garda Síochána, Curmid Fása Anish Riv Chief Superintendent Derek Smart of the Limerick Division in charge of policing in Limerick.
And just to acknowledge everybody, thank you for such kind words from Garda Síochána, from all the speakers this morning. We're just one small part of the blue line and of the frontline services that are provided to the people in our city. on it. I have the privilege, I have 36 years service in the Garda Síochána, of serving and leading the Limerick Garda Division. Through all of that, I've met with such wonderful people in my own organisation, but also in public in regard to it. And to thank Mick for coming with this idea. I thought it was mad. At one stage I thought we'd never get anyone to do it, but to be fair to Sandra kept plugging away to try and get people to put their thoughts onto paper. And that whole reflection piece is very, very important, I think, for everybody on it. We wear a uniform that acts as our scaffolding, it acts as our support, it acts as, almost as a barrier on it. But behind that barrier there are real people on it. And I think what Sandra did with the people we have, and I know Andy's here, and Andy's piece as well, is very reflective of what CAST is. And CAST is looking at how do we, the system we've been using hasn't been working for the people that we're serving on the ground that are in crisis. We need to change how we respond to their needs. CAST is, I think, a very, very positive step to doing that. So I just wanted to keep it very short and just say thank you to everybody that was involved. Thanks, there were other people we tried to get to write their little pieces. I was one of them on it, just couldn't focus the mind to do that at times, but reading the pieces that are there, I'm so thrilled with my retired colleagues and my serving colleagues that did take the time to do it. And I think it just gives you a glimpse. These are people behind the uniforms, and it's just the garden side of it on it, but there are, as Mick rightly says, our nurses, our colleagues in fire service, the suicide watch around the city as well. We're all there to help, and I'm delighted that we're a part of it. So thanks again, Mick, for including.
Thank you. And next, I can't repeat the introduction that he asked me to use, but instead, could we please welcome Rory Keane, the Regional Coordinator for the HSE Midwest Drug and Alcohol Service.
Thank you, and thank you to the committee for inviting me. On behalf of the HSE, I first want to acknowledge the work of all the contributors in terms of taking on the challenge of the blank page. It's an incredible piece of work. It gives us a real insight into people's work, their thought, the reflections in terms of working in very, very challenging situations. Obviously to acknowledge the work of Dominic and the Limerick Writers Centre. This is part of what's now a well-established partnership with the Drug and Alcohol Forum in terms of really trying to think differently, trying to think creatively in a challenging way about the work that we do and the domain within which we work. Obviously to acknowledge the work of the committee, Sandra, our colleagues in the Guards, Mick, Philomena, Helen, the whole of the forum team in terms of putting this together. It's a fantastic piece of work. When we flagged within the HSE that we were supporting this, there was some curious questions like why are we doing something like this, that we're primarily involved in addiction treatment. And I'm struck by one line there from Nick Lacey, who I understand is a minor poet from West Clare, roots in the liberties and his head and his heart freely exploring the imagination of the world. Have you no voice? Have you no voice? At the heart of what we do in addiction is that belief that everybody does have a voice, and that voice needs to be heard. And that's the challenge. The work we do is framed by clinical governance, the evidence base, and greater care pathways, SLAs. But at the root of everything that we do is we tell stories. We listen to vulnerable, hurt, struggling people. We listen to their stories. And we work very hard, the model that we work from, which is a humanistic model, and a model which is used by our colleagues in the community voluntary sector. It's around giving somebody that space to say how they feel in that moment. And through that dialogue, and as Nick stressed, through the collaboration piece, to start to build a real understanding. I'm really struck by the work that CAST has done. I want to be part of the committee of CAST who meets on a monthly basis. And like everything that we do, there are very clear, there's a framework around it, and there's policy, but at the root of it is we tell stories to each other. And we tell stories that have been told to us by some of the most vulnerable people within the city. And when we meet our colleagues in the Guards, when they come into our methadone clinic when we're struggling with a client, we tell stories. We don't give somebody's blood pressure. We don't give the latest stats in terms of the medical assessment. We say, Rory's really struggling today with this, we're concerned, because normally he's like this, but now he's like this. And it is a narrative approach. It's an approach which is driven by stories. And that really is at the heart of the work that we do, because we know within addiction that when we give people the opportunity to express the richness of their hurt, the richness of their trauma, we also give them the space to articulate the richness of their aspiration for themselves. And it's through that process we start to work with them in terms of how we can see people get better and make change. So this is a really important piece of work, because whilst we have an enormous emphasis on listening to the voice of the clients that we work with, it is the voice of our frontline workers which really inform the work that we do. And where we're successful, and I think the Drug and Alcohol Forum in the Midwest is a good example of how different services can work collaboratively together. At the heart, we have the service user, but we also have the frontline worker. We think very, very carefully and strategically around how do we support people to do a very difficult, challenging job. So again, I just want to acknowledge the work done by everybody, the collaborators, the commissions that are putting this together. It's a really important piece of work, and just being here and briefly talking to Dominic, I have ideas in terms of what the next piece could be, so we will need to talk about that. And I think it's a really important part of the partnership approach we take in Limerick. Just to say finally, we were able to fund this through the Drug and Alcohol Forum. We would act as the channel of funding. With a different hat on, I would be part of the cultural community in Limerick, being a member of the Limerick Jazz Society organising committee for the festival. Arts funding in Ireland is not in a great place. It's an enormous challenge to keep pieces of work like this going. So whilst this is free and it's fantastic, we've been able to fund it so people can take a copy. If you can make a contribution to the Limerick Writers Centre, that'd be really appreciated. It's important that we have that richness of the cultural experience within Limerick. And institutions like the Limerick Writers Centre are very important in sustaining the life of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. We will soon hear from some of the contributors to the book, but before that I'd like to welcome Geraldine Mooney Simmie, the Professor in STEM Education at University of Limerick, whose work fosters critical consciousness and collective values to address some of the needs in Irish society, to officially launch the collection.
Yeah, thank you very much. agus tá anás a bheith with an margin all-in shop in Limerick. It's beautiful to be here today and representing the University of Limerick to have a thread of congratulations to all the speakers before me, to say I have found the book both enjoyable and challenging, and also to hear a number of threads going through all of the speakers' work that has been very valuable to listen to. One, I suppose, a thread of hope and transformation, the concept of us as humans being on a life journey, that journey isn't straightforward, it's not linear and rational, it doesn't actually happen in a simple way. I mean, to get to where we are today, we've all had bumps on the road. So that thread of hope and transformative possibility, the need for the voice of every individual and the need for particularly the voices from the front line, to be able to hear those stories and to be able to sit with them and to think about them and to think about re-educating ourselves as a people and the importance of that today. So what I have heard today has been uplifting, it has been challenging, and I have to concur with the speakers who have talked about the need for nuance and complexity. And I've also, I suppose, thinking about what it is to be a decent society and what that might mean for us. So maybe before I make a few points about it, maybe to just tell you a little bit about the role that I have. I was appointed as Professor of STEM Education 3 years ago, running a research centre at the University of Limerick. As you know, STEM is science, technology, engineering and mathematics. And so we have thousands of young people who go and they become the teachers of these subjects around the country. So maybe it's the softer side of the part I'm in, because I'm in STEM education. But there is a tendency with government policy and global policy to make STEM always be hard, all about the number, the evidence, a medicalised model. And it has absolutely lost the plot by doing that. It has actually lost its connection to our values and to arts and to ethics. So they're well used to me in UL talking about STEAM education and blowing off loads of hot air and steam at them and at everyone and at ourselves, and reflexively challenging ourselves. Because if we lose the concept of the arts, philosophy, history, and everything from teleology to religion to spirituality, if we lose all of those things, we've actually lost our values. So now we have actually nothing, we're going to stand for nothing because we have no values. So really at the heart of it, education is about an ethical journey. You bring in evidence, naturally you need it, but you don't need it to be an expertocracy. It doesn't have to be always you rely on the expert to tell you what to do. They contribute, but in a democracy, and as Mick Lacey talked about in a participative democracy, you need lots of other voices. You don't only need the expert and the politician on the television broadcast when they're debating an issue. You need nuance, you need complexity. So we have gone away from that. And we all know that the tech bros are really busy now making sure that we're going to be robotic into the future. So I suppose my role is, as Professor of STEM Education, helping the researchers, working with the student teachers, working in education, working with policy makers. I also work as an expert researcher now with the European Commission, and I said to them, well, maybe when they asked me first to join them, I said a little bit like the Bob Dylan song, you know, it ain't me, babe, you're looking for. Because I do critical and feminist research, which means I'm really about truth-telling and policy and saying maybe how we've lost the plot, maybe how we've actually we've bought in a medicalised model of education, and we have lost the arts and the philosophy and the ethics and the deep questioning, and we've kind of grabbed onto number and evidence and scientific evidence, and we've ran with that, and we've kind of lost ourselves. Because who are we today as humans? We're humans in relation. We're in relation to ourselves. We're in relation to others, human and non-human. Hopefully we've some relation to God or some spirit animating part in our life, something that uplifts us beyond nature, that we can identify with some uplift of our spirit. And we also are in relationship, whether we like it or lump it, to technology, because none of us can now be walking around without iPhones attached to us or whatever. We have some bit of technology attached to us. And we're also in relation with our environment and the planet. So what this book has done for me is it's also reminded me again of why I'm National Coordinator of a group called the Critical and Feminist Special Interest Group in Ireland in Education, where I'm the national convener of it. We've over 40 members and we're hoping to grow it. And there are educational researchers around the country extremely worried about policy that is actually a medicalised model of education. We want to bring back a humanising model of education that's about care and justice. So maybe to just say to you, some of the great philosophers in education come to my mind today as I'm listening to you talking about the wonderful anthology of prose and poetry and reflections that you have produced from the front lines of social care here. And I'm thinking, for example, of Paulo Freire, who talked about participative democracy and solidarity and the need for attention. When we approach young people, it's a need for relational attention rather than intention. It means I have to come to you to listen and have an encounter with you rather than come with all my stuff that I'm going to do to you. So that's another way of looking at it. Maxine Green talks about the importance of imagination, because without imagination we're never going to be able to get out of the locked room that we seem to be in at the moment. We actually need a new imaginary. It's an ideal time because the world seems to be in a bit of chaos. I'm putting it mildly. So we definitely need a new imagination. What do we need to make Ireland a decent society? And uplift all of us, and all of us have a wide awakeness around that, in reflexively and reflectively, taking our time, slowing down, thinking about what matters to us. All of these things have come up for me as I've read the stories in the book. They have grabbed my heart and my soul. I'm thinking of Martin Buber, who in the 1930s watching what was happening, the other rating of people during the rise of the Nazis in that part of Germany in the 1930s, and his great philosophy of relationship. And I often think of it like with my grandchildren now, they like to play Lego, they're age 2 and 3, and I often think if you had 2 pieces of Lego, you could explain this part of care with 2 pieces of Lego, because the bottom piece is about the rules and regulations and the social order and the important things that we need. We need some rules and regulation and social order and agreed ways and laws and all of that necessary. But the top part of that piece of Lego that we need to clip in is the I-thou part, where I see you as a person, I listen to you, I celebrate your voice, I hear your story, I work with you in that kind of space. That is actually love, solidarity at a deep level. I see you as a person. And so all of that participative imaginary is coming for me through the book. So what I ask our policymakers all the time, and I'm sure they're tired of me, but at the same time I am going to keep going, is how we frame the problem matters. So we must never frame the problem as the problem of the individual, the person in trouble. We must make the problem as a structural and a systemic and a cultural problem, and say, what do we need to do in our structures, in our institutions? What do we need to do differently? Out at the University of Limerick, in all of the universities, in our teaching institutions. After all, this book is an education resource. This book is an education resource. Its storytelling is so powerful. It brings the imagination, it brings the political consciousness to bear. So that transformative truth-telling and witness-bearing is so important. So I will finish by just saying that obviously it's wonderful to be invited here and listening to all the speakers to launch the book. And I'll finish by just reading what I think is those few sentences on the back cover that say it all. These are stories, essays and poems that refuse to look away from hardship, injustice and loss, yet also insist on recording moments of solidarity, joy and quiet resistance. Together they form a chorus of witnesses, reminding us that change begins with listening, and that the telling of a story, however imperfect, is an act of courage and care. Garmila Mahmoud.
Thank you, Geraldine. We have 6 people who have volunteered their names so far. If anybody maybe at the end feels that they would like to read their piece as well, we should have a couple of minutes for a short extract or a short poem. The first volunteer on our list is Inspector Sandra Heelan, whose work focuses on community engagement. So, welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. I just checked we are in the afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you. I don't know how I'm going to top the speakers there beforehand. My piece comes from my time in the drugs unit. I was there for 11 years, and I could apply this to lots of different people that I met along the way when heroin took over. So before I go any further, I just want to thank Mick, Philomena, Dominic and all the Midwestern Drug and Alcohol Forum for your assistance in this, and also to my colleagues who submitted pieces. It wasn't an easy job to get them to write, and I have just about got what's in the book in it, so I'm sure we have lots of stories to tell, but not really to put on paper. So without further ado, I'll just read my piece. The daughter, sister, girlfriend, mother. She was 13, pushing limits, skipping school, disappearing, flirting with the law, love bites, the boyfriend, holding hands, the bump, standing by him in court, tears, I'll miss you, I'll wait for you, pushing the buggy alone. He's out, in love, arguments, bruises, he doesn't mean it. Black eye, holding hands, the bump. Prison visits, the double buggy now, a family on the surface, losing weight, pale skin, hollow eyes, the buggy gone, the shuffled walk. She's on the street. €1 for a cup of tea, love. A smile, thinner, fading, invisible. Standing on the street, on the corner, scanning the street. How are you, love? Just waiting for my friend. Have you seen him? Great news, I'm getting my kids back next week. A smile, good night. A stranger's car slows and she gets in. Thank you.
Up next is Mary Distell Rowe here. Yes. Mary.
Sandra, I'll have to be as good as you. I suppose 50 years ago I cut my baby teeth here in Limerick as a young vanguarder, not knowing a whole lot but learned an awful lot. And here I am, I suppose, looking down at people that I helped cut their teeth as well. Sandra, Derek, Andrew. And thanks very much for inviting me up to say this. I'm better at writing poetry than saying it, but bear with me. So the one I've chosen, I suppose, is the shortest one. On the face of it, it's about domestic violence and, I suppose, the hidden side of it. Domestic violence must no longer be hidden. All is rosy in the garden. On the face of it, blossoms and colour, ensconced around the frontal exterior, in bright, vivid colours, den of tranquility. Well, that's what it looks like on the face of it. Social, private, personable, glamorous, hard-working, educated, happy on the face of it. Job, independence, COVID-19 slowing life down, sudden outburst, wailing, piercing, a domestic incident on the face of it. Clenched fists, loud noises, call for help, but no entry. Lockdown, another one. Blood, tears, savage assault, dial 999 fast. Assault, on the face of it. New norm of domestic abuse, knows no bounds. Coronavirus not to blame, no excuses. Domestic violence is not a new norm on the face of it.
Up next, John D. Kelly.
Hello everybody. Delighted to be here and thank you for inviting me to submit a few poems. I work as a psychotherapist in Monaghan, Dundalk, Castleblaney. I deal with people that are challenged by addiction. This poem called The Last Loaf is about the people beyond that person or surrounding that person with addiction. And that might be relatives, family, partners, and it's in the voice of this person's partner. It's called The Last Loaf. Surely he must know that the bailiffs are bound to be coming soon to puff and to terrify our children. He must know by now that poetry has no chance of keeping those wolves from our door. He can't even put flour for home-baked bread on our table, the one with the 4 sturdy legs and pristine oak top, acquired like many other pieces of holiday furniture, long since gone in the good times. Surely he must know it, the time when he was sober, when he could afford iams for the dogs, and 3 square meals a day for each of us on our round bellies, never noisy until now. Surely he must know that I can't even make more dough to prove overnight in our empty pantry. A last loaf bakes slowly in the range, and I see him almost let the fire go out for its lack of logs. I saw off the bottom of the table's legs about half a foot off each to stoke it, to save it. I tried to leave them all the same height, less than 2 feet each, to keep its top heavy and the oven lit until a golden crust forms. The chair legs follow one by one. I think of straw on a camel's back. The seasoned oak burns well, nice and slow. We sit lower at the floor, but warmer, all 6 of us, for as long as the 24 smaller chair feet logs last. We cut it hot and eat it dry, without hips or butts or butter, while he rhymes and tries to conflate our freezing feet with a iambic pentameter, until he feels one of my cold plates of meat disappear off his once poetic butt. Thank you.
Next, could we have Sharon Murphy?
When I saw the call looking for people to submit pieces for the anthology, I wasn't quite sure if it was something that I should get involved in, because I don't actually directly work in what might be considered a frontline service. So I work with Loudmead ETB in adult literacy services. But then I thought a lot of the people that come into our service have been touched by homelessness, addiction, and all of the issues that have popped up in this book. And I also felt that the people that I deal with never, ever have their voice heard. Yet the statistics still show that 21% of the population are below level 1 for literacy, 25% for numeracy, and 38% for digital literacy. So it is an ongoing issue. It's quite a hidden issue. And I just wanted to tell the story. It's a mixture of the stories I've come across over 20 years. I've mixed up the names of the stories just to protect identities, so I'm just going to read, sorry I'm shaking here, I'm just going to read a little excerpt from the story that I've written. So, as an adult literacy tutor, I've had the privilege of working with people with unmet literacy needs. People who have overcome their embarrassment and taken a huge and brave step to ask for help. Let me introduce you to some of the people I've met over the last 15 years. I've edited the names and stories to protect identities. We'll start with Jimmy. Jimmy left school aged 13. He always struggled with reading the blackboard in school and felt he could never keep up with the rest of his peers. There were 35 students in his class. One day, when Jimmy was really struggling with reading something, the Christian brother who was teaching the class stormed down to him, gave him a couple of wallops, pulled him up by the collar of his shirt and marched him out of the school and down the street to Jimmy's home. When his mother opened the door, he threw him at her and told him not to send her back to school till she'd had his eyes tested. His mother then gave Jimmy another couple of wallops. She brought him to the optician. Jimmy wore glasses he didn't need for the next 40 years. He didn't return to school and worked as a builder's labourer until retirement. When Jimmy's first grandchild was born, he decided to do something about his reading and writing. He had never confided his issues to his wife or children, though he suspects they knew but said nothing. He walked over the town to the Adult Literacy Centre, but couldn't pluck up the courage to go in. He did this every day for 5 years. His grandson had started school by that stage, and although Jimmy had always read him his storybook at night, he'd made up the stories. He realised that his grandson would start to notice the words on the page were different. When Jimmy finally plucked up the courage to walk in, the receptionist barely looked up at him. He explained that he needed help, and she handed him a 10-page form to fill in. Dismayed, Jimmy left with the form to fill in at home and return. He didn't go back for 2 more years. Since starting the literacy classes, Jimmy enjoys reading with his grandson and helping him with his homework. His grandson helps Jimmy with his homework in return. His confidence has grown and he has made friends with other learners in the group. He described his experience of learning to me one day as having a fresh coat of paint on his life. Everything is clean and new. Mary left school aged 11. Her mother was extremely ill and struggled to manage at home. Her father was a farmer who was out on the land most of the day, so Mary had to take over the care of the house. She had 3 younger brothers and had to cook and do the laundry for the entire household. Mary met and married Frank in her mid-20s. She went on to have 2 daughters and 2 sons of her own. Frank looked after all the paperwork for the house and Mary took care of the children and the housework. After 45 years of marriage, Frank passed away. Mary didn't know how to pay a bill, take money out of the bank. She didn't want to rely on her adult children. When I met Mary, her confidence was on the floor. One comment from Mary that stuck with me to this day was, "I dream of what it might be like to open your own post and be able to read it yourself." Tommy is a member of the travelling community. He left school at 11 to work with his father. He always loved books, but he never owned one. I noticed he never had a notebook or pen with him when he came to class. Whenever I gave him notes or homework in class, he never brought them back the next week. He eventually confided that he threw all his notes in the river on the way home each week. He couldn't risk his family finding out that he was attending class. From then on, we kept his notes and books in a box at the centre. Lorraine started life in a Magdalen laundry. She was adopted by a lovely family as a toddler, but always struggled at school. When she joined the literacy group, she explained to me that written words seemed to jump around the page and give her a headache. Lorraine dropped out of school at 14 and worked in a factory for 20 years. She didn't need to know how to read or write on the assembly line. Lorraine has 3 children and a history of abusive relationships. She regularly turned up at the centre covered in bruises. She doesn't like going to the doctors or any government office where they might ask her to fill in a form. Patsy, Jane and Jack are all embarrassed about their handwriting. All are naturally left-handed and were beaten in school and forced to write with their right hand. And I can associate with them because I'm left-handed. Patsy had a nun who tied her hand behind her back every day at school so she couldn't use it. Dominic loved writing at school. He clearly recalls authoring a poem of which he was immensely proud. He also clearly recalls the teacher telling him that there is no way he wrote that poem, and he can still hear the slow tear of the page as he watched the teacher tear up his poem in front of the class and throw it in the bin. Dominic struggled with alcohol his entire life and has attempted to take his life twice. Since joining the centre, his confidence is building up again and he writes stories and poems every week. They're really good and no one tears them up anymore. Nora hid a bottle of vodka in the cistern of the toilet at the centre. I now know why she went to the toilet so often and was often giddy by the end of class. Dan was homeless. He dropped his bag at the reception of the centre after spending the night in a homeless shelter. He hung around town after class to pass the hours until he could go back to the shelter. It was difficult for him to maintain his personal hygiene and he sometimes washed in the centre bathrooms after class. Sarah couldn't read the instructions on the medication for her small child and gave her an overdose, which landed her daughter in hospital fighting for her life. She feels eternally guilty for this. Edna and Josie just want to be able to do their online banking and pay their bills. They didn't grow up in a digital age and hate having to ask their grown-up children to complete forms online for them. Olivia had nightmares about the red pen all over her work, telling her what she already believed, that she was stupid and incapable of learning. I make sure I only ever use green pen to correct or write comments on my students' work. Mark had 47 children in his class. The teacher used to come in drunk most days. The back row was known as the dunce row. Mark sat in the dunce row for 7 years. As an adult, he ran 2 successful and profitable businesses and had a team of 8 working for him. Despite all this, in his head, he's still sitting in the dunce row. Oliver's dad pointed a gun at his head. One day he threatened to shoot him for being stupid. Oliver is dyslexic. Sonia didn't leave her apartment alone for the first 2 years she lived in Ireland. She came from Somalia with her husband seeking protection from war. She couldn't speak any English when she arrived. She's now out in the community working as a social care worker with older people. I could tell you many more stories, but I think you get the gist by now.
Now, next we have Sean Dalton.
I seem to be getting taller as I get older. There was a guy down there with a jackhammer. I'm not sure if you heard him, but he's gone away for a break anyway, so I'm delighted he's gone because we were struggling there in the early stages. But I was just thinking, you know, whatever you're doing, there's always a guy in the background with a jackhammer anyway, you know. So you have to drive through. If you're waiting for everything to be right, you won't do anything, you know. When I met Dominic there in a hostelry there a while back, and he mentioned that this production was coming up, but he said, Sean, it's only in 2 or 3 days. But writers always work better to deadlines, and even though some of this was written around 3 o'clock in the morning, I did get it finished, and I gave it to Dominic to put the final touches in it. And I want to thank Dominic, Mick, and anyone else who was involved in this, Kieran for editing it in this publication, because if I knew it was going to be so good, I'd probably be afraid to write for it. Anyway, I'm Sean Dalton. I'm involved and chairman of the Men's Shed in Durdile Raheen. We started up a few years ago, and we're now open 5 days a week. And if I knew it was going to be successful, I would have probably been afraid to start it. But we have a wonderful committee out there, and I see a couple of them down there today, and it's great to be supported by them. I'll give you just a small piece of what I've written. It's because you can all read it yourselves while you're having a cup of tea later on. After more than 30 years of dedicated work, retirement beckoned like a long-awaited promise. Like so many others, I had dreamed of this moment, the freedom to finally pursue neglected hobbies and rediscover passions that had been buried beneath decades of responsibility. The first 12 months were blissful. I threw myself into all things I dared to do when I was chained to my job. Yet slowly, an unexpected emptiness crept in. The camaraderie that had sustained me through countless workdays was gone. Those cherished friendships, forged in the crucible of shared challenges, had faded into occasional phone calls and Christmas cards. Weekends, once precious escapes, now stretched endlessly before me like empty pages. It was during one of these quiet moments that I stumbled upon something called the Irish Men's Shed. My heart stirred with curiosity and hope. Here was something that spoke to the loneliness I couldn't quite name. A place where men could gather, create, and simply be together. There was no men's shed in our area. The dream seemed impossible before it had ever even begun. Yet something inside me refused to accept defeat, and I reached out to other men, and to my amazement, their eyes lit up with the same yearning that I felt. We were not alone in our isolation. Our first meetings were humble affairs, gathered in living rooms, sharing tea with tentative hopes. With each conversation, our little group grew stronger and our vision clearer. We dared to dream of something bigger than ourselves. You can read the other part, and I'll just finish off here. In our shed, at the moment, we're now open 5 days a week. We have 85 members. We have a very strong committee, and the main thing we have is fun. We have lots of fun, and I keep telling the lads that's what it's all about, because for too long we had the responsibility of work, and fellas come in with sour heads in them, and bosses telling you about deadlines. So when anything comes on in the shed, I said, whatever you were doing, lads, let's have fun. And we play a lot of music, we tell a lot of stories, a lot of lies, and we drink a lot of tea. The morning cup of tea has become sacred in our shed, a ritual that binds us together more surely than any contact. When one of our oldest members told me that his wife said he gets as excited as a schoolboy on a field trip when he's come to the shed, my heart nearly burst with pride. Visitors come across Ireland now, drawn by the warmth and the energy that radiates from our little corner of Durdile. They leave speaking of the welcome they received and the palpable joy that fills our space. I have learned new skills I never imagined mastering at my age, but more importantly, I've learned the profound truth that community is indeed the greatest antidote to isolation. Here in this simple shed, we build something beautiful, not just with our hands, with our hearts. Across Ireland, men's sheds are quietly revolutionising retirement, one friendship at a time. We're proving that it's never too late to start over, never too late to build something meaningful, and never too late to discover that the best chapters of our lives might still be waiting to come.
No, we've already gone slightly over the advertised time, so we've just 2 speakers left on the list. First, could we welcome Olumide Olatakunbo?
Hi, my name is Olumide, and I work with Novus as a support worker, and I also have a bachelor's degree in English, so which made it easy for me to write this. I have 3 poems in the book, so I'm just going to read 1 or 2, Okay. They come not broken, but carrying weight, stories stitched in silence, shadows at the gate. A duffel bag holds more than clothes. It holds a life once torn apart, memories folded into corners, grief wrapped tight against the heart. They've slept through cold, through the sirens' wails, through nights that knew no safety rails, and still they rise, with eyes that scan for exits, yet long for open doors. They find small strength in showing up, in saying less but feeling more. A hand extended, just one, can be the light that cuts the grey, a gentle nod that says, you matter, you're not a burden, not today. One more, and the title is Healing. This walk is not to fix or cure, but to walk the longest mile, to meet them where the world gave up and greet them with a smile. We battle myths that chain them twice, that relapse means they have failed, that hope should only stretch so far, or mercy must be scaled. But wounds this deep don't heal on time or fit in tidy rows. The journey back to self and trust is the one that no one knows. Yet still, we fight for second chance, for housing, care and space, for systems built to lift, not judge, to hold, not just to trace. We've learned that healing isn't neat, it's messy, raw and slow. But in the chaos, seeds take root, where only weeds deep grow. This work, it asks us not to flinch at pain too vast to name, but sit with it and honor it, not turn away in shame.
Thank you. And our final speaker from the list of contributors is Teresa Tierney-Bulger.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm a nurse now over 20 years and in the caring profession a bit longer than that. This poem, I have 3 poems in the book, and this poem, I suppose, is written at a time where we had a lot of institutions in the country, and I suppose I was fortunate to still work under that system and train in that system. And thankfully we've come so much further in terms of resources and different things we can offer people with mental health challenges. But this poem has, I suppose, evidence of what we did with what we could at the time, and with non-PC and red tape happening. Gratefully unsuccessful. He came in agitated with an edge sharper than any knife, a high-risk admission with no will for life. A wee bit of a relaxer to take the edge off. Going through his property, he seemed to be getting soft. Tears were in his eyes when it came for his wife to say goodnight. I'll be grand once I get a bit of sleep. Haven't been sleeping lately, he offers. Sleep is the key to a lot of things, I say, but other things are needed too. I head to the kitchen to fill a jug of water. My gut is churning about this one. I fill the jug fast, wanting quickly to return. I open the door to find the curtains closed. My stomach drops and mine starts to race. I pull back the curtains, his feet swinging in my face. My heart skips a beat, screaming. I pull my alarm, and with all my strength I lift his weight. Another male patient comes to my aid, and together we hold up his trashing body. Hung by a sheet from a pipe under a ceiling tile, a clever patient determined to die. Seconds feel like hours, sweat pouring out of both of us as he fights us. 3 male nurses arrive, take his weight. I call for the Hoffman's knife. I grab the knife from the charge nurse. He puts a chair up on the bed. I'm the lightest and can climb the fastest. They hold us steady as I throw in semicircles through the thick fabric. It's not working, I shout. Keep going, says the charge nurse. It will cut through. I give it one more unmerciful cut with venom, and down he goes into their arms. Crash team is at the foot of the bed. He is gasping, and thankfully he is not dead. His face is purple and eyes are bloodshot. Veins are prominent, neck badly marked. He is rushed to ICU and to the nurses' station. We are all marched. Phone calls are made, notes are written, forms are filled. Some of us are checked over by a physician. Adrenaline's been pumping, but the shakes are coming now. The charge nurse closes the door. Sit down there, young one. You'll not forget the first time you cut someone down. You did well. You didn't panic. You saved his life. Not everyone can handle this job. It gets in on them. It causes a lot of strife. He makes a pot of tea for the four of us, and he tells us all to sit down. He opens a locked press and pulls a whiskey bottle out, pours a shot in each mug and demands that I drink that, followed by, Mary will run you home, and is there someone there to have a chat? I think back on that now. I was fresh into nursing and I had to hit the ground running. In those days, there was no time for rehearsing. The charge nurse was of old stock, a hardened breed, but kind. He had seen it all. I learnt a lot from him. He was gruff, but calm, and had a brilliant mind. The gentleman hanging made a full recovery. He had a long road, but when he came back to himself, I learned he was a gentle soul with childhood trauma and actually quite lovely. I heard he is retired now and enjoying a slower pace of life, enjoying his grandchildren and the company of his wife.
Brings us to a powerful close. Thanks again to Limerick City Hall for hosting this event today. Also thanks to Marion and Pat and everyone behind the scenes at Limerick Writers Centre. Massive thanks to all the fantastic contributors to Frontline Voices. It's incredible to hear stories from all over Ireland and further afield. Massive thanks as well to everyone who came today. I know some of you travelled quite a distance. So please do take a copy of the book and continue to spread the word.